Sorry kita ada masalah background tadi. Can we begin? Kita?
Yes, Prof.
Okay, semua orang dah masuk eh? Have you add in them? Have you add them in, kita?
What, Prof?
Have you included everyone in into the session? Or the add
Sorry. So far, 59 attendees.
Jangan dah ada dah. Can we start now?
Can we? Yes. We can start.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Petang session is a bit heavy. Okay. Hopefully, we can. I have another session actually. Now, when I prepare, as I was looking through the slides, I realized that something is not. I think I have to make an end in my next presentation, my second part of this issue on result and discussion, because I think something is missing. The part on analysis, data analysis is not being addressed by any of the speakers. And then when I look back, I found out that the title that is given, or the topic that is given to me, is using a topic which is based on the traditional thesis format, not based on the current thesis format. So I have to make amendments. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to focus more on just results and discussion, but the data analysis I will have to discuss in the next session, because there's two parts on my side. I do not want to discuss the data analysis because I think I'm not ready to speak on the data analysis part. So I'm going to talk about results and discussion first. Okay, so we're going to move back. We're going to go back as we go through the session. Now let me begin by sharing the slides. But I will share with you why I think the topic that is given to me today is inaccurate, and I hope in the next presentation I will have to have it corrected. The streaming is not clear. Are you guys? Can you guys hear us or hear me? Because I'm a little bit worried on my side. Normally during the weekend, the internet connection here is not that good, because it seems that everybody is turning on their Netflix and they're staying at home. So it really takes up the internet connection. Okay, good. Thank you so much. All right, now let us move on. Let me share the slides. Now when, hold on a second, where is the slide? Here. Share it. Okay, let's put it on slideshow. Now, result and discussion. So when I was preparing the slide, and I was looking at the slides just now, I realized something's missing. Now, when you have the result, means you present only the results. All right. Now, I transition from research methodology. Suddenly, I go to result and discussion. So where is the analysis part? All right. Because when you say result, you only report the result. You're not supposed to do anything else. Just report the result and discuss about the result. So where is the analysis part? Then I realized that the topic result and discussion is actually the traditional way of writing the thesis, which has changed. Right now, let me show you why I say this. Hold on a second. Now, this is the Putra Business School format. Right now, what do they have at chapter 4? They have analysis and finding. Okay, and the result is being discussed in the next chapter. Right, so here they only analyze the data. What are the findings? And then I went and checked with AEU, also the same, data analysis and finding. Okay, then you look at chapter 5, discussion and conclusion. All right. So I think I will inform the organizer in the next session, which I don't know whether I'm still around or not. For the next session, I would suggest that there should be a change in the title for this particular session. Should be on data analysis and findings, and the next session should be on results and discussion. It won't be fair if this topic is not discussed, the data analysis part, right? So what I will do is, I do not want because my preparation for the data analysis is half cooked or half baked. I'm not going to discuss it today. I will postpone it to the next 2 hours, which will happen in the next session. So today, I would love to discuss on this. Reporting the results and findings, yeah? Now, what happened here? After you've done your data analysis and everything, your next role is to report your results and findings, okay? How do you report them? This is very, you may look at, okay, you look at the first sentence that I shared here. This is where you report your findings. You report, okay, you report your findings, and probably the most straightforward part of your report to write. It's very straightforward. What did you discover? You report, okay? Now, where you have analyzed your data, in other words, the data analysis occurs earlier than this, right? Now, when I was doing my PhD, we were given autonomy to name whatever title we want. We can label the chapter title up to us. We are given liberty, we are given freedom to decide how many chapters, how many pages. There was no limit at that time. Okay, so a friend of mine from UKM, you know how thick his thesis? He has 2 volumes of thesis. He was doing a study on ergonomics, right? From UKM, 2 volumes. That means he submitted two sets of thesis, volume 1 and volume 2 for his PhD research. At that time, we were doing. I was at Loughborough University in UK. Right? You can just imagine how thick thesis is. 2 volumes. All right. I dare not go that thick because I do not want to carry it with me. Okay, it's so thick. I saw him carrying it. It was tough for him to carry. As you know, the old ways, or I mean, in the UK, the papers are very thick, with thick covers and everything. Okay, so coming back to this one, basically, this is where you report. It says only report because the analysis has occurred earlier. Now, when I did my PhD, I have a separate chapter for data analysis. Okay, I have one for quantitative data analysis. I have one for qualitative data analysis. In fact, one time I tried to go against the UTM format, but my student had to come back to me and say, Prof, they do not approve. UTM is very strict. They even take the ruler and measure the space of your thesis and make sure that it is within the stipulated size. Okay, say the margin is about 20 cm. They will take the ruler and they will measure and make sure that your thesis is 20 cm right margin or left margin or whatever. Okay, so some universities are very strict. Now, when you have analyzed, you will include the results of your statistical analysis, use tables and graph to illustrate your finding. And do not put in the appendix if you feel that this data is important for your argument. Now, I've seen students where they put too many data in the chapter, but they never sort of like refer to it. Okay, they never refer to it. They just put the table and that's it. When you put a table there, at least say something about the table. For example, table 4.1 indicates the number of respondents who responded to the study or who agreed to blah, blah, blah. All right, do not just put the table and move on. And another thing that when you report your findings, okay, that one I think is earlier. It is in the analysis part. Now, when you analyze the data, quantitatively, you are likely to include illustrative quotations to convey the richness of your data and offer insight. Now, when you put the quotations, be very careful, right? Do not over-quote it, or do not put too many of it. I remembered when I did an interview of one CEO of a pharmaceutical company in Bangi, the guy who I interviewed wants to see the entire report that I made about his company. All right. He wants to see it before I can put it on my thesis. Now, this is the problem when you are doing qualitative research in Malaysia. I've been involved in writing cases before on a number of companies in Malaysia. The moment you contact them, they know that you are from a Malaysian company or you are Malaysian university. That's it. Okay, no way, Jose. They will not respond to you. But if a professor from Harvard Business School were to contact them and tell them that I want to do a case study on your company, anytime they will accept, right? This is the mentality of a Malaysian company. So you have to be very tactful and you have to be very careful when you are doing your qualitative research. I think I understand why in our first session someone asked he was having difficulty trying to get 5, but he only managed to get 3. This is the problem with Malaysian company because they do not want to disclose their data. Okay, so what I did was when one company has instructed me not to put the actual data in, so what I did is I created a hypothetical data, right? Which I later found out that it's the same method that Harvard Business School did. Right, so I use a hypothetical data. What Harvard did is that, for example, the sales data, they will blow it up or they will increase all the data by 20%. Right, if they increase sales by 20%, they will also increase the cost by 20%. So not to reflect the actual data. Okay, so this is one way for you if you feel that companies are not responding because they fear that you may share companies' data. So tell them that you're going to use hypothetical data and tell them also that you will get their approval. You will show exactly them what you're going to write before you put it into your thesis. Okay, so, I did that with 2 companies and finally they agreed. Right now, your finding or your result may be composed of more than 1 chapter. It depends. But you got to discuss with your supervisor and depending on the university. Now, when I was in UTM, we had a bit of a problem because UTM is an engineering university. So basically, we are governed by the engineers' ways of doing things. For example, the title should not exceed 15 words. Because in engineering, that's what I suspect so. So basically, we have to maintain our title of our thesis, my student thesis, not more than 15 words. So we have to calculate and make sure that it is not more than 50 words, which is actually tough. Okay, they do not allow colon or semicolon in the title. So you have to find out. You must read the handbook, your thesis handbook, and from day one, you register for your PhD or DBA program. Sorry, I wish to apologize to the UNITA DBA student because you got yours a bit late, right? Because when I was a director there, we were trying to get it ready. I think by now it is already ready. It should have been given to you. Okay, so in other words, with the moment you enter the program, ask for the thesis format, all right? Maybe DBA perhaps different. We can start with coursework first, but the moment you will start your research, get a copy and make sure that you start writing chapter 1, chapter 2. In other words, your proposal follow exactly as required by the format from day 1 when you start writing. If they say use APA style of writing, use APA style of writing. Same thing here when you're doing your reporting. You have to follow the format, the requirements set forth. See, because in Malaysia, we are quite strict in terms of format. But from what I know, universities in UK, they are a bit flexible, right? And sometimes you may need 2 chapters or more than 1 chapter. Please discuss with your supervisor. Your supervisor can advise if you feel that, wow, this chapter is too long. Because sometimes there's a lot of data to report, a lot of results to report. Okay. The question that you should ask yourself is more than 1 chapter necessary to communicate my finding or result clearly? If you feel that you need another chapter, please discuss with your supervisor so that you have another chapter. Now, when I was doing my PhD, I have one chapter 1, but I have 2 for chapter 2. My literature review consisted of 2 chapters, right? That is based on the advice of my supervisor, because he wants to make sure that I'm able to explain things clearly, right? And the purpose of your findings or your results chapter is to present the results of your data analysis. You've done your data analysis earlier, right? So the next step is to present it. Okay, to present it. I know some students, when they do not really took advantage of the descriptive analysis. Okay, let's say you did a descriptive analysis of your data. Actually, descriptive analysis is as important as your other analysis, because sometimes the research question can be answered through the descriptive analysis. And make sure you make full use of the descriptive analysis. I've seen students in PhD Viva where they only have 1-page descriptive analysis. They have only the table, that's it. Okay, they only say in 1 sentence, table 4.1, describe the sample, full stop, and never taking advantage in trying to utilize the descriptive data, in trying to explain or in trying to answer the research question. It is quite strong, as good as anything, because before the advent of SPSS and everything, descriptive analysis was considered as one of the powerful tools at that time, right? So make full use of your descriptive analysis, you report and analyze, okay? Now, it is normally not appropriate in this chapter to discuss the results. So here you don't discuss, you just report, right? Discussion can happen elsewhere, okay? So you have a section later on for discussion, and that's where you discuss. Now, in certain universities, they require discussion and conclusion as 1 chapter, right? So that will be in the next chapter. And in this chapter, you only report the results and the finding. Just report and do not do any further analysis or whatever. It should not happen in this chapter. So I think that's why this particular chapter, you go to most universities, they have already do away with result and finding. They will have analysis and result. Sometimes it is also reported together with the analysis, as I've shown you earlier. Okay, as you can see here, analysis and findings is being discussed in 1 chapter. So result is actually findings. Okay, so as you can see, this is a Putra Business School format. The title of the thesis that I was once the examiner. In fact, I have a soft copy of the thesis with me. So that's how I got to check back on the thesis. And this is how they wrote chapter 4 on the analysis part and findings. Okay. This is where in this chapter you talk about the data analysis. Normally, if you're doing a questionnaire way, and I did that for my PhD, non-response bias, and surprisingly, it is still being used until today. You can just imagine in 1996, I was doing my PhD research, and the first thing that I put in my thesis in data analysis is non-response bias. Until today, it is still being used to show that there's no biasness in your sampling. Okay, and then common variable data screening. How do you screen the data? All right. If there is an outliers, how do you deal with outliers? If there are missing data, for example, how do you deal with missing data? Okay. Do you take out your questionnaire, or do you follow through the questionnaire that has a lot of missing data? You have to inform in your thesis how you deal with it. For example, outliers. If you detect an outliers in your data, what do you do with the outliers? You drop it, or what? You deal it. How do you deal it? This must be discussed in this particular chapter. Now, do you guys know what an outlier is? That's a very interesting question. Okay, good. At least you know what is an outlier. Outlier, I mean, if you plot it under, if you use SPSS under QQ plot or PP plot, everything every point is along one line, quite close to the line. Suddenly you have one, which is quite far from that line, and that point is known as outlier. So how do you deal with it? Yeah, having too many outliers may not be good because it creates a lot of variation in your data. Okay, and then yeah, someone asked me, when do we do descriptive analysis? Normally, immediately after the you receive back your questionnaire or your response, you start doing your descriptive analysis. That's quite interesting because to start it that early, it will give you some idea of your sample. All right, how is the response like? Actually, there's a lot of information that you can gather from descriptive analysis. Okay, yeah, data point in statistics, right? And make full use of it. Okay, UCM was still doing that when I was with them in 2010. Now, okay, good. Not yeah, they still wow, not to exceed 15 words. So they're still doing it. I think not more than 15 words. Actually, it was tough because social science, we are very descriptive in our title. So I had a tough time arguing with the School of Graduate Studies, but somehow or other we have no choice but to follow it. Okay. So that is the issues when it comes to coming up with the title later on. Remember, the title is the last thing to come up from your thesis, and not the first. Don't worry about the title. It's just like you have to give birth baby, then you give the name to the baby. Same thing here, your thesis is ready, then only you decide what is the best title to give to your thesis, okay? And then demographic of respondents, normally you can do it in the form of descriptive analysis, right? Here you have to describe how many respondents have you received, how many respondents have you considered as unusable because a lot of missing data. I got that problem. I issued out 310 questionnaire. I got back about almost 100 over, but I have to reject about 50 or 60 of them because simple reason, because I was asking for sales data. I need the sales data, 3 years sales data to determine the growth of the company. But the problem is most of the multimedia super corridor company at that time just got started. Was their first year, and they do not have 3 years sales data. So 40 over companies that come from multimedia super corridor has to be rejected, right? So it was a bit painful after distributing so many questionnaires and you did not really get the result that you want. So it's very, very heartbreaking. Yeah, very heartbreaking. But you have to persevere, and that was why I followed through with a qualitative research. So always focus on the solution. When you are stuck with your PhD research, okay, discuss with your supervisor, move on and come up with a solution. How best can you solve the problem, right? I did not really got good response rate because out of 300 over, I only got 81, which according to Dave Coates at the time was my co-supervisor. He is this statistic guy. He says that's not good enough. Okay, because based on my sampling frame, I have about almost 400 companies. At that time, there were a lot of multimedia super corridor MSc status company because we just got started. Everybody was excited. Everybody wanted to be under the MSc status. But later on, I found out that quite a number of those companies closed down. Yeah, they just got excited. Yes, when you talk about qualitative research, that will be in chapter 4. Chapter 4 can be divided into two. What I did was I divided chapter 4 into two. One is the quantitative research, one is the quantitative data. No, I have a separate chapter actually. One chapter for quantitative data analysis, chapter 4. Chapter 5 is qualitative data analysis, and I discussed about my case study there. But as I told you, in the UK, long time ago, they do allow such thing, but in your university, you have to check whether they allow or not to have two separate chapters for quali and quanti. Yeah, if they say no, one chapter, then you may have to include everything under chapter 4, which makes your chapter 4 quite thick, right? Is there anywhere we can find good guides? Thank you for okay. I'll share some of the. I got a few articles. I'll share with Zam and ask him to pass over to you guys, okay? I will share to you some of the theses after this, which I had evaluated, because during MCO, there was a number of viva that took place, and they sent us the thesis in the form of a soft copy. So I do get a few copies, and I can show you some of them so that you have some idea of what is going on, especially when you are doing your write-up. Now, I know the process of writing up is actually, it started from day one, when you start doing your research. If you are a PhD student, from day one. If you're a DBA student, the moment you start doing your proposal, that is already writing up process. Okay, so you have to start writing. And then you have the descriptive. Yeah, you can see the descriptive analysis part is very important. Now, this study is about self-efficacy, spirituality, and whatnot. And you can see how they describe the sampling, the samples result based on the efficacy, based on the five variables, right? And then they did an analysis, a multivariate assumption test, test of normality, linearity, homoscedasticity, and multicollinearity. Let me discuss later in the next section. And they did a data analysis using partial least square. This is where they did analysis. But then the result is being put in the next chapter, okay, and discussed. So different universities have different style of writing. Please check with your university which format are they using, and make sure you follow that format. Okay, I've seen one student. I don't know how he got through the supervisor. Okay, I don't know how the supervisor managed to approve him. When he went for the viva, there was a lot of criticism given by one of the internal examiners. You got to remember, the internal examiner is from your university, so he should know what's happening in the university. And that student had to go for a major correction. I was the external examiner. He had to go for a major correction, in the sense that he has to rewrite it according to the format that is set forth by the university. I think the supervisor was quite new. He was not aware. They were supposed to use APA. He was using I think the AMA or MAA. Yeah, I can't remember the other one. Okay, so check thoroughly. Oh, Everina, you're in. Good. Thank you so much, Prof. I'm facing the same problem now. Low response rate for my survey. Oh no, this must be the other Everina. Are you from Spirita? My supervisor suggested for me to, okay, this is different, to change to quali, but I'm still quite stubborn because spend some time developing the questionnaire, and I feel the need to show the result based on quanti result as well. Do you have any? Okay, sometimes you have to, I know the problem is because of sometimes the supervisor may not be familiar with the quanti method. I know one of my colleagues in UTM, Prof. Rosmini, now she's the dean. She is a very quality person, right? She's a very quality person. And we always argue. I used to have a number of consultancy projects with her. When it comes to doing the analysis part or data collection part, we always not in good terms. She always wants to go the quali way. I want to go to quanti and quali way. So finally, she said, okay, you do the quanti way and I'll focus the quali way. And we will merge our report together and make sure that we synchronize it later. So in a way, I know your difficulty, especially when your supervisors may have difficulty on the quanti part. That was why I was the one who suggested to my supervisor, because he is a quali guy, he's not a quanti guy. So I was the one who suggested to bring in a co-supervisor who is a quantitative person. Dave Coates was the one who advised me until finally Dave Coates said, "No, you don't need me. Actually, you are also a statistic lecturer." That was what she told me. But I told him I want him to be in because I need the confidence of my supervisor. So I told Dave, having you around, Dr. Dave said, having you around will give my supervisor confidence in my quantitative work. And then that was what happened. Anything when pertaining to quantitative research, my supervisor will always pass me to Dave. You go and talk to Dave, see what Dave said. Okay, so I have no issues. And that was how that was the solution that I proposed to my supervisor when he was not comfortable when I started out with a quantitative method. So as I said, that's how you need to manage your supervisors. Because of his fear, he was worried that he may not be able to supervise me. So I brought in And luckily, Dave Code agreed to co-supervise. Because Dave Code was our research trainer, and he was focusing on the quantitative method. All right. So I think, Everina, try and talk nicely to your supervisor, convince him that you are using the quantity as an exploratory or whatever, and then you're going to follow through with a quali. I would suggest you follow through with a quali, because I think if your supervisor wants go to the quali way, follow through by a quali to make, perhaps you want to triangulate using the quali method. Okay. Or agreed mixed method. Go for it. I think it's useful because you can yes, yeah. In other words, you are having the same problem that I had last time in my PhD research, because of my response rate for my quantitative method was quite low. So I followed through with a qualitative method. I think it's good for you in the sense that, as I said earlier, when you're doing your doctoral research, it is actually a training process for you to become a researcher in the future. Right? So now maybe you're strong in quanti. Now it's a time for you to do some training to learn about qualitative method. It's okay to go for that, because I'm a quanti person. When I started doing quali, I hate it initially, but later on, when I started going for training, I started doing the interview. I realized that my interpersonal communication improved. I became from an introvert to more extrovert. Right. So the training that I had during my PhD really better prepared me. Okay. And when I become more extrovert, I started to talk a lot. I become more confident. So I think that was why I became the dean later on and moved up to become the deputy vice chancellor of UMK, because it helps to develop my confidence when I started to interview people. I keep on questioning. Yeah, I become more critical. I question a lot. Yeah. So when I interview, why did you do this? Why can't you do that way? Is there a solution? Why not this solution? So you become a bit critical. As I said, do it because it helps to train you to become a better person. Look at it from a positive way. Okay. I always took, when I did my PhD, I always take it positively. Take it positively and don't worry, life will be easy for you. Okay. Okay. Thank you. All right. Now let's move a little bit more. The effect. Okay. This is another thesis that I happen to be the examiner. The title of the thesis is Effectiveness of Entrepreneur Training. Sorry. When I copy paste, I did not do it right. Of entrepreneur training towards sustainable agropreneurship among B40 participants in Bagansarai. The topic was too long. The title was too long. We had to get her to redo the title. But anyway, this is a small matter. So as you can see, in AEU, chapter 4 is data analysis and finding. Okay, data analysis and finding, and discussion is in chapter 5. I like this more than the one that is given to me, which is on the topic that I was supposed to talk about today, but I think this should be the way. So I'm going to propose in the next session, if they do organize this kind of webinar, to separate out and have one section on data analysis and finding or whatever. Let discussion be in the next chapter. All right. So when you put this thing together, data analysis and finding, I think that should be easier. And then we can start discussing about the method of analyzing data. I will get to that, I think, in the next section. It's quite interesting because this is where you actually do your hypothesis testing. Now, be extra careful. Make sure that you justify the statistical tools or statistical technique that you are using in analyzing the data. Okay, do not overdo. Now, I asked one day, I asked a question to one student. I think he's an Iranian student, if I'm not wrong. Why do you do this analysis? Is it necessary? Can you achieve the same result without using this analysis? He was not able to answer. Okay, he was not able to answer, and later on, I found out that he paid someone to do the analysis and the report. That was the biggest mistake he made. All right. So please be extra careful. And I know in Puchong there is one place where you can even pay 15,000 ringgit to do the entire thesis. They will do the data collection and everything. Okay, because we caught one of my students did that. It was quite a long time ago. I think the company was so close with it because we did report to the police. Right. So basically, this is where, as you can see, AAU Putra Business School works in the same manner. I'm trying to get the UTM thesis, but I couldn't find in my hard disk. So and then I remembered the thesis that I got from UTM are all hard copy. At that time, it was before MCO. So I have to return the hard copy of the thesis. And these are the theses that I evaluated during the MCO. Okay, I think this particular student is based in Perak. She's in Perak. And then if you move on, you can see that then we get to the discussion part. All right, now this is very interesting. In the discussion part, you see that the findings without thought run the risk of your reader asking, so what? So when you report your findings without no discussion, without nothing, you will definitely run the risk of people asking you, so what? Okay, what's the meaning of this finding for me? Because you only report. Okay, so what is the significance of this finding for my organization? What is the significance of finding for the professional practice and development of the theory? This is where the discussion part comes into play, right? And this is where you actually interpret, you discuss the result and interpret them and present it in that particular chapter, whichever chapter is up to you. Okay, if your university require it to be in chapter 5, be it in chapter 5, discuss it in chapter 5, right? Now, say I supervise and I also examine a lot of DBA candidates. Now, when I go through the thesis or the dissertation, for the DBA dissertation, I will always start with the last 2 chapters. I never start with the first chapter. So because I want to see, because DBA focuses on the practical aspect. It is, because DBA is a practice doctorate. So when I look at it, I want to see what is the practical impact of the dissertation or of the research or of whatever study that was being done. Now, when I look at the PhD research, I will start with the first chapter, first 2 chapters. Okay, especially the first chapter. And then only I go to the last chapter. But for DBA, I will start with the last chapter, then only I go to the first chapter, right? Because DBA is more of the practical impact. I want to see whether there is any oomph. Now, you got to remember, yeah, the last chapter belongs to you. The last chapter is all yours. This is where you really express out your thoughts, based on the research that you have done, how it should. This is how things should be. That is the chapter. Last chapter is where you did. Okay, not in any other chapter. So try to avoid citation in the last chapter because that chapter belongs to you. You have already done the study. You have already gone through the research process, and you have read a lot of articles, a lot of literatures. So you are considered an expert in that area. So that last chapter, we reserve it to you. Being an expert after 3 years or 4 years of conducting the research, we leave it to you in the last chapter to say your mind, your thoughts based on what you have found out. All right. And when I read that chapter, I would like to see there must be some oomph. All right. The last chapter should be some oomph. And normally it is related to the chapter earlier, which is discussion chapter, or maybe some of the university require discussion as in the last chapter. As you can see, I think if I'm not wrong, HE, they put it in the last chapter. See, so after you have analyzed the data, then comes the last chapter. So to me, last chapter is very important because last chapter is where you voice out, you say it out, right, based on what you have figured out from your study. It's all yours, right? You are the expert now. You have 4 chapters behind you already, right? You've gone through the process of reading as many articles as possible, conducting research, talking to people in the industry. It really helps to, it builds up your knowledge, it builds up your experience. you are now you're going to be an expert researcher after this, right? So when you come to the last chapter, we leave it to you. Okay, say whatever you want to say. And normally, I want when I look at the last chapter, I want to see some oomph in the last chapter. Okay, very impactful, and you must use the right words. And this is where normally what I would suggest when I'm supervising my PhD student, when you send out for proofreading, make sure the proofreader helps you a lot in the last chapter. Ask them to use impactful sentences, impactful words to show that you have done a good job. Yeah, you've done a good job. And I've seen quite a number of examiners when they comment the last chapter, they say, your last chapter got no life. Yeah, your last chapter, no oomph. You've lost steam in the last chapter. You've done a very good data analysis. You've done a very good data collection. Your research was very good, but when you come to the last chapter, there's no more life to your thesis. All right, you need to rewrite the last chapter. And when they say rewrite, then that means you really have to rewrite the last chapter. That means it is not well written. It's not well written, and don't take it lightly. Yeah? The last chapter is very important. Because I know some people, they just take it lightly. We just put limitation for study. We just make some suggestion based on what Mrs. Kani literature review and relate a bit to the finding. No problem. You will have problem when you go to your Bible, especially when the examiner is an expert in that particular area. And he knows a lot about that particular area. And he feels that what you presented is already, people talk about already, there's nothing unique, but there's nothing novel about your findings and whatever. And then you'll be in trouble, okay? So the last chapter is, yes, raw like the lion, but don't overdo this, yeah? Raw like the lion, okay? So that's what I'm trying to say. So in order to get to the last chapter, chapter 4 is very important because it helps you to prepare for the last chapter. It provides you the bullet. That means through your findings, it prepares you to raw in chapter 5, all right? So you must make sure that your chapter 4 is also well written. Your analysis is within the framework that you have discussed in chapter 3, because normally in chapter 3 you also discuss some of the methods of data analysis that you're going to use. Okay, so to me, I always tell my students when it comes to data analysis, make it as simple as possible as long as you achieve your research question and your objective, right? You do not have to use complicated method or whatever, and yet you do not understand what the method is all about. Okay, I know some people, the trend now is towards SEM and all those method. I always reminded my students, make sure if you use it, you know what it is. Okay, you know how to use it. Okay, if you get someone to assist you, learn from that particular person. Do not just pay him to do the analysis and also to prepare and write the output. You must sit with him or her, discuss about your output, and make sure you understand what is being, is in the result, right? So that is very important. So basically, when you go back to the analysis, the main focus of this discussion is to interpret the result you presented in the previous chapter. And you should state the relation of your finding to the research question. This is very important. Always revisit your research question, especially in the last chapter. Say, remember the research question is where you derive your objective. So basically, most examiner that I know, including me, when we go to the last chapter, we will start going back to chapter 1 because we want to see what is the objective, what is the research question, and what is the objective of your study. And I will look at the last chapter, how you conclude, how you discuss, have you achieved, did you achieve your objective? Now, I know some students, the way they write, they say, this study has achieved its objective and were able to answer research question number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. I think they were advised by the supervisor to do it that way, show that their studies has achieved those objectives and answered the research question. So at the end of the day, it's how you put your words, and that's why I think one thing I learned about doing research. By the time I finished my PhD a couple of years ago, I realized that my communication skills improved. And being a quantitative person, you've been teaching numbers, operational research and everything. You deal with numbers, right? You interpret some of the numbers, that's it. You never really looked into how you relate it with the industry, okay? In my life, I'm trained to be an actuary, I have to pass many exams along my career. So I studied just to pass exam, right? I sit for exam, and most of the exam are basically quantitative in nature. So I tend to become a bit introvert initially. And I was teaching UITM for 8 years. Then when I started going to UTM, instead of going to the Faculty of Mathematics, I purposely asked the Vice Chancellor to put me in the Faculty of Management, because I think I want to try and go to a different perspective. And that was why I started teaching quantitative method, and I got interested in entrepreneurship, and I realized that I need more skills. So I went for my PhD. I think that really provides me with the skills that I need. So you look at your PhD as something very positive, right? It's not just about getting a DR title, but what other thing that you gain from your PhD? I'm sure networking is one of them, right? I've been a good friend to MTDC, even MDEC, and even Mike until today, because of my PhD research. And if you look at my thesis, I mentioned the name of the CEO of MTDC, Dato' Nur Halim Yunus, in my acknowledgement, right? And he said that the only thesis that really mentioned his name, he just retired. Okay, so that's the whole idea. And you should state your relationship of your finding to the research question. Always relate to your research question, right, in your discussion. And in addition, the discussion should discuss the implication of your research for the relevant theories that you have detailed in the literature. If you're talking about PhD, definitely you have to relate it to the relevant theories that you discuss. What about DBA? I know there's some DBA student in here. What do you do? Oh, Ben, you're in. Oh, elaborate triangle. Okay, I will explain to you. Now, if you're a DBA student, what would you do? Can I see someone writing on the chat? If you're a DBA student, what do you do in this discussion part? Do you relate it with the theory, or what do you relate it to? Chef Adrol, are you here? I thought I saw you. The result? Relate to practice. Yes, you are. All right, because DBA is a practice doctorate. So when you discuss, try to relate it as possible to the problem that you are trying to solve in the industry. For example, you talk about ESG, right? You found out that SMEs inclined toward ESG because now they see that only larger companies focus on ESG because that is being highlighted by Security Commission and Bank Negara. If you want to go for funding, growth funding, you have to be audited. You must be audited for the ESG practices, right? But for SMEs, for example, is it important to them, right? So basically, when you come to this discussion, you relate the SMEs to the fact that they are going to be, assuming that from your finding you found out that SMEs are going to be in the oh my God, they're going to be in the supply chain of those larger companies, and somehow or other they still have to adhere to the ESG requirement, whether they like it or not. So you relate it to that particular practical aspect which SME pays when it comes to ESG. But as you're doing your PhD, you may want to relate whether your research has contributed or add in or negate or even add more information pertaining to the theories on ESG, for example. Okay, I'm just giving you a snapshot example, which I'm not really good at that, right? So basically, you relate to the practice if you are a DBA student. If you are a PhD student, you have to play around with the theories that you discussed earlier. How does your findings relate to the theories? If the theory indicates so, does your findings agree with the theory, or does your finding contribute something else towards the theory, right? Or maybe because of your findings, you sort of come up with a new theory. For example, you call it Ravi theory, right? This is a theory that you've been using all this while as an underpinning theory, for example, or perhaps because of your result, you find out that your research has added something new, perspective to the theory, or you can say modified theory, Potter's theory, you may call it a Rabi theory or whatever. Okay, that's how theories got established, right? Through research and through PhD research. Okay, now it is usual to discuss the strength, weakness, and limitation of your studies. Be honest about it. Okay, be honest about it. Definitely in your research, there are many limitations that you have come across. There are many weaknesses, and you also have a lot of strengths. Okay, your research has a lot of strengths, which you must acknowledge. Okay, so this limitation may be about the sample size. For example, in my case, my limitation was about sample size. I was not able to get a good sample size in the sense that the companies were totally new at that time. They do not have the data that I need, which is the sales data. And moreover, companies in Malaysia are very secretive about their sales data, right? When you ask for sales data, they will just, oh, okay, and then they will just set aside your questionnaire, all right? But if you ask for, can you tell us what is your perceived sales? They're more than willing to share. So Malaysia is a bit different. They do not like to share some information which they feel that should not be shared with to the public. Okay, so I mentioned that in your limitation, in your weakness. Now, why do you need to share it? This is very important so that the examiner will understand that you have a number of limitations as you try to complete your research. Okay, and when the examiner reads your thesis, he will realize that, oh, okay, I'm not going to go hard on him because he faced quite a number of limitations in his study, which may have an impact, okay, on his result. I remember one UiTM student, he was having difficulty in getting data because the SMEs were not into it, right? The area of study that he was conducting was not, the SMEs were not into it, so he was not getting the data that he wants. The sample size was quite small, and he mentioned that. And one of the examiner initially hit him hard, and finally when he looked at the last chapter, he realized, oh, that is his limitation. The SMEs were not participating in the study because they don't really practice it, so they just ignore it. And then he starts to tone down, okay, start to become more friendly to the student when he started reading the limitation. So whatever it is, whatever problem you face, please be honest about it. Put it in this chapter. This limitation may be about sample size, snapshot nature of the research, or the restriction to one geographical area of an organization. Virtually all research has its limitation. Share it. Okay, share it. We understand. Yeah, we understand. So share it, right? Okay, Ben, you make a comment. All companies, regardless of size, yes, I agree with you. Because smaller firms are scope 3 and one, Ben is an expert in ESG. Anybody here who are into ESG, it's best to get in touch with Ben, right? One of the 3 compulsory emission to report emitters. Yes, I agree with you, okay? Recently, there was someone who says in the newspaper, I think one of the ministers says that SMEs are not required to go for ESG. I totally disagree with that. Sooner or later, it's going to be, as Ben said, all ESGs will have to adhere to it. Okay, so this section should not be seen as a confession of your weaknesses, but as a mature reflection. Okay, you're not trying to get the examiner sympathy, no, right? But it is more of, in the sense that you are sharing the actual limitation that you face, right? And so that in future, someone will read your thesis and they would want to continue from where you stop, and based on your suggestion for future research, they will look at your limitation. Oh, okay, he faced this limitation. Okay, now I understand. If I want to conduct research in what he did, then I have to overcome this limitation, right? It's not a confession, but it is a mature reflection. You're reflecting in your thesis, to which your finding and subsequent conclusion can be said to be generalizable. When I did my study, I was using non-parametric method, so it was very difficult to generalize my study because of the small sample size. That's why I say when 80 is not good enough for me to generalize, so I follow through with a qualitative research. But I managed to pass. As I said in my first presentation, I had only 3 corrections, which 3 spelling mistakes. I do not know how they found out that 3 spelling mistakes. And it took me I think about 15 minutes to have it corrected. Okay, but I took my time actually. I did not do it immediately. When I was told that I passed with minor correction, I was a bit concerned about that minor correction. So when they shared to me, oh, you have only 3 spelling mistakes that you have to correct. So I took my time. I took a day off. I took, I think, about a few days off, and I went to a tour. Okay, because I'm so happy because I know I can do it in a few minutes. Then I came back, submit my correction, and flew back to Malaysia. So basically, all the hard work has been rewarded. So as I said, you may face a lot of tough limitation, barriers, and whatnot. I think the best part is when all your effort is rewarded during the Viva or after the Viva. The feeling of victorious, the feeling of you feel so happy, so relieved. You feel as if like you are at the top of the world when your examiner announced. You know what, they called me in. They asked me to sit down. Congratulations, Dr. Hassan. The moment, what? I did not realize yet when they mentioned my name, doctor. And then my supervisor said, hey, did you know that you passed? Or then I realized what it was, why they called me Dr. Hassan in the first place. Okay. Now in Malaysia, we cannot do that because we have to get the Senate approval. Then only we can call you, give you the DR title, right? But normally I would call my student DR the moment they finish and pass the Viva. So that is the point, I think, which you have to work on this chapter. I'll get to the analysis part later. Prof, is in discussion discuss about hypothesis. Yes, basically the hypothesis is discussed earlier in the analysis, right? In the, some degree in the chapter 1, I totally disagree. I think it's best to discuss hypothesis in chapter 2, and the analysis is done together with the chapter 4. In chapter 4, you did the analysis and what is the finding is discussed. The finding is also reported there, all right, but discussed in the discussion part. Okay, so and then again, I think sometimes you need to discuss with your supervisor. Again, some supervisors do not want to discuss it there, so whatever it is, discuss with your supervisor and get his buy-in, right? Is in discussion. Okay, thank you, Ben. It's good to know you're here. Related how industry can use, yes. Oh, Janice, you're here too. Related how industry can use your finding test. You got it right. Okay, related how the industry can benefit from your research, right? If you are a DBA student, please elaborate triangulation. Okay, man, triangulation is this. What happened to me that is that there are some findings that I got from my quantitative method, right? But since my sample size was quite small, I need to validate it. I need to follow through by a qualitative methods to validate my findings, because I cannot generalize it because sample size was small. I had to use a non-parametric method, which is not a strong test. So when I did my qualitative research, I have a number of propositions. Instead of hypothesis, we call it proposition. Okay, in quantitative, you call it hypothesis. In qualitative, you call it proposition. So I come up with a proposition based on my quantitative study. I test it through my interviews until I reach saturation point. And finally, I did my conclusion, and that conclusion or that result or that finding support or negate the finding of my quantitative method. All right, that's what you mean by triangulation. All right, you're using I'm using the qualitative method either to support or to negate. because my finding from the quantitative method is not strong enough to generalize. So that's what we mean by triangulation method. There are many definitions of triangulation, but I'm sharing based on my experience, what I went through. That was what I did. I triangulate using my quantitative method, the qualitative method. All right. Okay. Qualitative has fewer tools to use, can outline more. The critical quality mechanism. Okay, I think I will do the quality part and quantity part, Ben, in the next session, because as I said earlier, that is the technical or the analysis part. I would rather do it in the next section. I think I need 2 hours, a solid 2 hours to discuss on that one, because I have to separate into quantity and quality. Today we just discuss on the reporting part, right? Okay, mixed method, yeah, mixed method, yeah. Mixed method is when you use both methods. What about chapter 4 for quality research? And normally, either you can have a separate chapter or you discuss with your supervisor. If it is allowed, then you can have a separate chapter. I would suggest have a separate chapter rather than same chapter as a qualitative method, quantitative method, right? If not, then you may have to put it in there together and discuss later. Good response data point statistic. We do descriptive analysis also include discussion. So does that go in result of discussion? Descriptive, yes, normally the descriptive part, you can also go into the result of the discussion. But normally you already report in your data analysis. You report about your sample, okay? That comes under descriptive analysis, for example. How many percent are male, how many percent what percentage of them are what age and what not. Okay. UTM is still doing, yes. I don't understand why they limit to 15 words. Okay, okay. Any question, please do ask. I think I would prefer to have discussion rather than proceeding with my talk. I could understand the logic for splitting result. I strongly agree with you, actually. It should be together, but I do not know why it is being separated. For me, I personally find it better if the discussion is part of the finding. And I think because they do not want to make that chapter too thick, as I suspect. I would rather to have it together. It's part of finding, and they have an overall discussion where you can combine the interrelate the result and come up with overall view of the finding. If we split, you have to go and pause. I agree with you. Okay, I'm from the school of thought that agree that the findings and the discussion should be together. Right, that was what I did in my thesis. I think conclusion and recommendation is the last chapter, but there is a part where we have data analysis. And what we did was we discussed about the findings in the data analysis. We analyze data, we discuss about the finding in that particular chapter. So basically, you discussed earlier. I don't know why they put it later. I suspect because they want to sort of like you combine the discussion based on the two, quantity and quality together. So you may have an overall discussion based on the two. I suspect that's why they did that. Okay. But to me, I still say that the discussion should be done as you finish your quantity and then discuss as you finish your quality. Okay, Ben, thank you for your human, and that is what the patient deviation motivated on trial and tribulation. Yes, I to tell the truth, based on my experience and experience of some of my friends. I mean, the process of doing your doctoral research really turn you into a more humane person, and it's a matter of humility. Okay, you become this way you learn to respect people. And I got a friend of mine who is so arrogant when he started his PhD, always arguing with supervisor, and then finally one day he failed. Okay, he failed because he refused to abide to the suggestion of the supervisor, and then suddenly he turned around because he realized that he's going back without a PhD, and somehow or other it changed him. It changed him. He became a more humble person, and he reapplied to another university and finally completed his PhD. But I was so surprised to see him change when he realized that he failed. Sometimes you need something to happen in order to change. Okay, He was very arrogant. We don't like him actually. We don't like to be in his company. And he challenged the supervisor. We advised him many times not to, right? But he still challenged the supervisor because of his arrogance. So the supervisor failed him, and that is when he started to change. He realized that I think he realized where his position is, right? So now I think I've met him a few times, totally changed. It's a different person from what he was before he started his PhD. All right, okay, any more questions? If say hold on, is there any other slides? I think this is all because I think the part on conclusion and recommendation will be by Prof. Amer in the next session. So what I'm going to do is I would prefer to stop now, okay, within 1 hour 15 minutes, and I would rather continue in the next session for the part on data analysis, right? Prof. Amer will come in and talk to you about the conclusion and recommendation, how to prepare your conclusion and recommendation. Prof. Amer is really good at that. Okay, it's good to have him going to that area. I think I don't think I want to cover the part on analysis. I would rather wait for it, and let's do a thorough discussion in the next session. But anyway, if anybody has any other question, please. Please throw any question if you feel through. If not, you can just ask. I've already shared my slides this morning to Dr. Zamani, and he will share to you guys. And I put my email address on the cover of the slides. So if you have any question, please feel free to ask, and I will share these slides again later on. Okay. Mana kita punya organizer? Hold on a second, there's a Q&A, dear admin. Now I assume next Saturday will be another session of discussion. No, the next session will be more on the data analysis part. Okay, 5 sessions actually. Yes, I think so. Siapa ya? Siapa organizer ni? Siapa nama tadi? Forgot the name. Because Prof. Zam is not here. Dr. Zam is not here. Okay, I think that's about it lah. Yeah. Unless if there is no more question, then we stop here. I prefer not to continue because no point for me to discuss. I think I need more time to talk about the data analysis part. Okay, so thank you everyone. Have a good weekend or whatever left of your weekend. I have a wedding to attend actually, but I don't think I will go. Really past the time where I have to be there. So see you guys again later on, and all the best to you. Hope to see you again in the next session. Okay, thank you. Good to see some of my DBA students in here, Minita. This is Zainuddin Diana or Diana Zainuddin. I think that one will be taken up by Dr. Zamani. So I'll leave it. I leave the answer here so that I leave the question here. Let him answer. Okay, thank you everyone. Afiza, is still there, Afiza?
Yes, Prof.
Okay. I think I would like to stop here because I will continue the discussion in the next session.
Oh, okay. Okay, can.
When is it next week?
Huh?
Next week,
Yep.
the other session. Yeah.
Next week last session.
Saya dengan Dr. Amir kan?
Yes.
Okay, I will continue then that day because I think
all right.
I prefer not to continue today.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Anybody here want to chat? You can stay. Pante, are you there? Mandy, are you still around? The number of words in the decision is usually included. Is usually included. No, okay. Basically, appendix is not included as the number of words. But anyway, check your postgraduate handbook. Normally, we don't include. We only include up to the references. Is that okay, Mandy? Okay, you're welcome. Okay, I'm going to leave now. So thank you very much, everyone.